Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, this is Joe and Jay Outspoken. You can find all of our social media channels and everything else by going to Linktree/Joe and Jay Outspoken. Today is Tuesday, and we are here ready to talk about 80s movies.
Yeah.
You ready, Joe?
Yeah. Did you forget what we were talking about?
Yeah. No.
Oh,
No?
okay.
I was trying to make it more impactful. You know?
Oh, I get it. Oh, I see what you were doing. All right. Now I get it.
I noticed you got a new picture on the wall back there.
Yeah,
Let's
it's
see.
just a picture. It's not the real thing.
Yeah. There's a picture of a boating accident and a
It's right. It's to the left of that. Yeah.
and a pellet rifle.
Yeah, you can't see the picture, but yeah, it's the picture of the boat that actually caught fire and it's sinking.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a Lego thing I put
Lego.
together. Yeah, it's actually really nice.
Well, awesome. Well, let's get this party started, and
Let's
we'll
do
talk
it.
about some 80s movies. Let's
Here
go.
we go.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Here we go with some 80s movie stuff. So, Joe, I mean, like, who doesn't love 80s movies? There's some great ones.
Oh man, there were some great movies out there that are
Yeah.
still being watched today. You know what's funny
yeah?
is that like now in society today, our music's kind of coming back, right? For a minute we saw our fashions come back, right? With Jordache coming back and Guess and all these things that was very popular back in the 80s in school with us. You know, everyone
Right.
remembers the little upside down triangle of Guess, and everyone wore that, and you know, the pants. Those are the biggest things were the pants and the jean jackets. But you know, people are trying to bring all that old 80s stuff back, Jordache, and there's another brand out there, I can't remember what it was, but you know, so you know, with everything coming back, one of the things that never kind of went away because it kind of followed us, and we kind of showed our kids and they kind of fell in love with them, were those 80 movies, right? And
Yeah.
they were so different back then because they had a storyline, whether it was funny, it was serious, or had some kind of message to relay. It did it in a way that it captivated our attention, and
Right.
you know, in the 80s, to captivate our attention was kind of difficult because we were all over the place, bro.
Right.
Like,
Well, you remember the colors. I mean, that's one thing that always stands out in my mind about the 80s is like all the, you know, the like pink and blues and all the weird like neon colors and stuff that
bro, they created a whole watch line, swatches,
Swatch
because
Swatch
of the
watch,
color. Swatch watch, remember?
Yeah.
And they created those little face
I remember
guards.
you had
little,
the pink one, remember?
Okay, it's mauve. All right, and salmon, I believe.
And
so
salmon, there you go.
Okay, so I don't know where you get pink from. Anyway,
Yeah.
but but they had also those little face protectors. Remember the little rubber band that went across?
Rubber band, yeah.
Yeah. So
Well,
so
that's
yeah,
they were probably, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more companies than that through time, but I remember the Swatch watch having so many accessory type things, kind of like, you know, Apple and all that does now, where you would want to accessorize stuff. And then as time went on, you know, of course, companies really pushed into that. So
yeah, there was another brand. I don't know if it was clothing. What it was? It's called Britannia or Britannia.
Oh yeah, Britannia.
Yes, yeah.
Britannia?
Remember, and that was a lot of colors too. I don't know what it was with 80s and the multitude of colors.
Yeah,
Like they're all of a sudden they invented swatches or something. Like, hey, look at all these colors, guys.
right.
You know, I don't know what the hell's going on, but we loved our colors, you know, and pastels and stuff like that were barely starting to come out. I think it was the 90s when they really took a grab of people with those pastel colors. But yeah, we had a lot of colors. But I think
We did.
I think it all started, I think, in the 80s with good movies and I remember this as a kid down on Miles Avenue. There's a theater down there. I don't know if you remember that theater.
I do remember that.
I went to go watch E.T., the extraterrestrial.
Ooh.
Remember?
Yeah.
That was back in 82 when it first came out.
82. Wow.
Yeah. I was 10 years old. when that came out. So it was a good
So
time.
I wasn't born yet, so
It sounds good. Sounds good. I believe we're the same age. now.
sounds good on paper.
Sounds good. Sounds good on radio.
Yeah, I have a face for radio too. So.
Yeah, clearly. But yeah, there was a lot of good movies back then, and some of them that stick out just the top of my head is like Pretty in Pink, The Breakfast Club, of course, my all-time favorite, The Goonies.
Oh heck yeah!
And then it seems like in the 85, 86, that right in the middle of the 80s is when all these good movies came out, you know, like Stand By Me, Harry Met Sally. No, Harry Met Sally I think was a little bit later, but there was so many. Fast Times at Richmond High came out.
Oh yeah, Spicoli.
Spicoli. What was that other one? They just came out with a new Top Gun. Top Gun came out in I think it was 86.
I know, it's so crazy to think that was so long ago, and here we are watching what it was called Maverick.
Yeah,
the new, basically Top Gun 2.
Yep.
But
16 Candles came out, Risky Business, and then one of your favorites, Back to the Future, came out in 85.
1985.
Yeah. So there was so many movies that, and another of my favorites, Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Oh yeah,
Bueller. You know.
And
but yeah,
and that's one of those iconic things that people just say, if they're like, I don't know, waiting on a table at a restaurant or something, and somebody starts calling a number and nobody's listening, they're like, Bueller. Yeah, anybody from that time knows what that is.
Yeah. Ghostbusters. We all love Ghostbusters, right?
Yeah.
The Never-Ending Story.
Never-Ending Story.
And then, of course, that's when we started getting a little bit into, like, I think in that era, we had a couple of, like, Morris Day and the Time, Prince. They started making movies, right? Purple Rain was one of them. Remember Purple Rain? Purple Rain. I won't say. But there was just so many good movies.
That was 1984.
Purple Rain was?
Yep, right.
Yeah, there was so many good movies. What was that? The one with Tom Cruise. He was very young, and David Bowie. Labyrinth?
Oh yeah.
Labyrinth, right?
Yeah.
Labyrinth. That one was out there too. Like, dude, I don't even remember Tom Cruise being young. I always thought he was just like the way he is now. You know what I mean? But I don't know. And of course, when we start talking about like kind of, then we had little comedy horrors like Teen Wolf. Remember Michael J. Fox?
Oh yeah.
And then the musicals. I don't know if you remember musicals, but the Little Shop of Horrors. Remember Little Shop of Horrors?
Yep.
Feed me, Seymour.
I remember our what do you call it? Our color guard that was at our high school.
Oh yeah.
They did a deal with Little Shop of Horrors, so they had all the the big plant, the man plant and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it was pretty cool. Crazy, man. So many I mean, and this is what's really weird. So when you get later on in the 80s, like 1988 it was Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which became kind of that new cutting edge way that they did cartoon and mixed it with live action.
Yeah, it was
really and that was, I mean, state of the art at that time, basically. Now, if you think about the 80s, you have to start at 1980. And in the year 1980, the Blues Brothers came out.
Oh, John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, right?
Yeah. And when you think about that, that seems like so long ago. Where Who Framed Roger Rabbit doesn't seem like it was that long ago,
It doesn't.
But then another early on movie that everybody remembers, and it sparked a string of, and shoot, they just made one recently here in the last few years, is The Road Warrior with Mel Gibson. That was 1981. So,
God, that was a good one.
That was, it was. I mean, you think about it. There's how many follow-ups have they done to that? Because I think the latest one was Fury Road, I want to say
Furiosa.
Fury Road.
No, the new one that just came out is Furiosa, the one that's just out in theaters. Yeah, it's Furiosa.
I thought it was called I thought it was Fury Road. I guess I didn't read it right.
Clearly not. But anyway, it's a flop. But
is it? Yeah, I didn't.
That's what I
didn't see it.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's Furos. It's one of the characters from the last movie that what's her name did, and that was part of that um, genre of movies. But
Hmm.
another movie, and as that year progressed, we saw different movies, right? Like one of the good and in comedies, right? What was it? Eddie Murphy Coming to America, one of the most hilarious
Oh
movies,
yeah.
and I think he also did during that time Harlem Nights, which was with Della Reese and all them. That was
Yeah.
hysterical. Um, and it's funny because I mean that's a whole different topic, but people say like, oh, all these movies just white people, but there were some great movies done by some great actors. Life
Yeah.
with Eddie Murphy was, but that's a more of a '90s, I think.
Oh yeah, that was way on. Yeah, because I mean, early on movies. What did you said? Fast Times at Ridgemont High. You already said that
Yep,
one.
yep.
That was an early on. 48 Hours, which had Eddie Murphy and
Nick Nolte.
Nick Nolte. That
Yeah,
movie was great.
I love that movie.
And let's see what else was Scarface.
Tell me a
Wasn't
story. Shut the fuck. Oh, I like that story. That's a great movie. That's funny.
That's funny.
You could never picture Nick Nolte in a comedy, but it was so funny.
Oh, it was so good.
But then you also had those serious movies. I don't know if you remember this one. I'm sure you do. Full Metal Jacket. You remember Full
Oh
Metal
yeah,
Jacket?
yeah.
That was such a great
Yep,
movie.
that was 1987, so it was a little farther towards
towards
the end. But there's so many like that. Full Metal Jacket. Look at all the now. There wasn't like a part 2 or anything like that, but there was a lot of war-esque movies that were kind of brought after that, right? That were because it got into the mind of the soldiers, right? And then, but it was showing the wartime stuff, and it really it hit a lot of people. People that were experiencing war from the mainland, right? That were watching their folks go off to war, but then for the soldiers that would come back to see that, that was that people were aware that they were going through a bunch of nonsense. Yeah, man. Remember RoboCop, 1987?
Oh, yeah. Remember the dance?
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
that was the bomb right there.
Yeah, there's let's see. I'm trying to think. What else? Let me look at some of it. Bill and Ted was at the very end of the
Bill and Ted.
the decade at 1989. Little Mermaid, which was a Disney movie, came out in 1989,
which was a really good one.
Yeah. What did we say? Full Metal Jacket was 87, right? Yeah. Pee-wee's Big Adventure came out in 1985. Yeah,
that dude.
Yeah, who just passed away not too long ago, like 6 months ago, something like that.
Did he? Oh, that's right.
Maybe
he did die.
Yeah. Crazy to think about stuff like that. Now here's one. Stepping back to the beginning of the decade, its franchise was already started with the very first one, and the second part of the franchise came out in 1980, and that was The Empire Strikes Back for Star Wars.
Oh yeah,
which was huge because I remember. So I know we're talking about the 80s, but I remember watching Star Wars in the movie theaters with my mom and my aunt. And
was that
being blown away at how
was that? What year was that? 76. When did it come out? The first one.
Let's look. Star Wars. I don't remember. 76 or something like that. Yeah. 1977. Sorry.
Oh,
okay. 1977.
Right.
Yep. So, really, I mean, if you look at the franchise, it's still going today, and all of us loved it. We mentioned on one of our other episodes, and you said this, that Disney got a hold of it and it's been ripping it apart and messing it up.
Oh, God.
But so again, thinking about later movies. So when one of your favorite movies is The Goonies, I love The Goonies too. And then mine's Back to the Future.
Yeah.
Well, that same year, The Shining came out in 1980, the very beginning of the year. But it just, again, it feels like a movie that was so much older, than The Goonies and Back to the Future. So
do you remember another one that both of us like? Beverly Hills Cop. Did we mention that one?
Oh, Beverly Hills Cop.
Remember that one?
What year was that?
84.
84.
Yeah. That was
Crazy. And then, so one of the things with, kind of going back to the Star Wars thing. So you had Star Wars in 1977. You had Empire Strikes Back in 1980. A year later, 1981, Harrison Ford does Raiders of the Lost Ark. So it really catapulted.
Some of the good ones. That was a good one.
It was.
Yeah.
And that really, so not that Star Wars didn't do a great thing for him, but I truly believe Raiders of the Lost Ark was really the one that catapulted him, because now he was the star. People already liked him from Star Wars, and it just really made him that much more. So here's the crazy thing. So you got so you have Empire Strikes Back,
Mm-hmm.
right? 1980, 1981, Raiders of the Lost Ark, 1982, Blade Runner comes out.
Oh my God, that was a good one too. And
So-
see, and those like movies to us, they seem so like advanced as far as like the
Right.
futuristic and stuff like that. I don't know if you remember back then. You're like,
Oh,
oh
yeah.
my God, that looks so cool. Like you're talking
Yeah.
about robots and androids and stuff like that. You're like, that's crazy stuff. But then you start
Yeah.
talking about like you did. Star Wars was made in 1977.
Right,
You know what I mean?
right.
So it is crazy to think how advanced well, not only how advanced we thought things were at that time, but just how good the movies were. Like they made so much sense to us.
Yeah.
Weird Science. Remember Weird Science?
Oh yeah, Weird Science.
Yeah.
Aliens came out in 1986. I don't know if we had already mentioned. Now we're
No.
getting so far into it, I don't remember what we've mentioned in that.
No,
one.
there's so many
But-
stuff that we didn't.
Yeah.
In the late
And it-
80s, we had Rain Man. Remember Rain Man?
Oh, Rain Man. Yeah.
With Tom Cruise. That was a real good. And of course, you can't forget the Nagasaki building, right? And
Oh,
the
yeah.
Christmas movie. That's
Yep.
debatable.
The-
People would keep saying,
Yeah.
Die Hard.
It's like Die Hard. It is not debatable. Yeah. And so, I had mentioned Aliens, which spawned multiple.
By the way, I
movies
take offense by the
afterwards.
word alien. I take offense to that. Let's use another word, please. Thank you.
It spawned a ton of movies afterwards and video games and all kinds of stuff. So it was really a big.
Yeah, there was. Yeah, I think in the 80s, some of these movies did start making. Aliens was a video game. Like a lot of these
Right.
movies were made into games once games started coming out.
What do you think they will? Because E.T. was at the time when it came out was the highest grossing movie ever, right? It had like crushed all kinds of records and stuff like that. And we're so far removed from that, and you would think, well, they'll never bring that back, and that was in the 80s, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, another movie that was in the 80s that was a huge cult classic, right?
Debbie Does
and-
Dallas. I think that was 80s as well. Oh, now we're going to be selective. Now we're going to be picky. All right. That's cool. Anyway, go ahead.
Beetlejuice.
Oh,
So,
man. Beetlejuice iconic.
yeah.
You know what's funny,
Yeah.
though? These movies are not iconic until later on, years later. They become
Well,
iconic.
Well,
right?
they're coming out with that. The part 2, gosh, I think it's like this month. I want to say.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's
And
in June
one of
sometime.
one of our high school friends' daughters in it.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
She
Yeah.
plays that role. So
Yep.
good for her. But yeah, that's coming out. And then do you remember? I know you remember this movie. You ready? I know you remember it.
Let's have it.
Less Than Zero.
Oh yeah, yeah, because that took place in the desert.
Yeah. Less Than Zero. But you also had Spaceballs when Mel Brooks
Right.
started making fun of some of the movies that he used to come out with, and he started doing those like
Right.
spin-off of these of Star Wars, and that was one of it was Spaceballs. It was so
Yeah.
funny. But some of the ones that we've also forgot to mention, and to me, Kenny Loggins is a hero. So Footloose. Remember
Footloose. Yeah, dude. That's
Footloose
funny,
was good, man. I'm not gonna lie. You know what? I'm not a big fan of remakes of movies. I really am not. Like, if it was a good cult classic, leave it alone.
Yeah, I would agree. There was when Gene Wilder passed away, and
Rest
the
in peace,
original
buddy.
Yeah, the original Willy Wonka. You're never going to touch that movie. I
No,
mean, and then they did, and I like Johnny Depp. I think he acts good and everything, but
he's good in certain roles. I agree with
that
you 100%.
like
Captain Jack Sparrow.
Captain Jack Sparrow,
No
he
one
was
else could
wonderful.
ever do that role.
No, but
But
man,
as
when they tried to
Wonka
bring back Wonka, it was
and that
almost
voice he
like,
made with it, it creeped
yeah, it
me
was
out more than
almost.
anything.
I know, dude. It was almost like child kidnapper,
Yeah,
creepy.
yeah.
Like,
All of a sudden, I'm
weird.
looking at the Pipe Piper, like he's dragging these kids
Yeah,
into the
yeah,
candy
exactly.
factory.
Yeah, Brad, come on in here. Like
Yeah.
he instead of walking out in the front, he should have had a white van with free candy on it or something. And then I
You know
watched
what? You
the
know what'll
new.
get me? A van that says free ammo. I'm in it.
There you go. Yeah, suckered in right away. Um, the newest one, Wonka, with I don't know who the young kid that's the actor. It did a good job, and actually the
Charlemagne,
movie
or
was.
no? That's not Charlemagne. I
I
can't
don't
remember
know.
his freaking name.
The movie was pretty cool, but again, it does. I mean, way better graphics and everything. It's in like 4K and looks amazing, but it just doesn't have the same vibe as the
It
original
doesn't,
movie.
because I did see it. I do like that they put some of the original scores into that one, and it was good. But I just didn't like. Gene Wilder had a way about bringing Wonka to life. Like now, everything that's Wonka is compared to Gene Wilder, right? You look at it
Oh
and you're
yeah,
like, nope,
absolutely.
that he doesn't do it. He just does a great job in doing so. Um, and I like I said, I'm not a big fan of it. Like when they redid the Little Mermaid, horrible. I didn't like it. I just don't like remakes. I'm not a big fan. Like, hey, you guys, this is Hollywood. Be creative. Besides being pedophiles, be creative. Think of new
Right.
stuff to make. Don't just keep remaking the same thing over and over and over. Remember Platoon? I forgot to mention Platoon.
Oh
Platoon's another one
yeah,
that came out.
Platoon.
But they had,
Short circuit. Remember?
oh
No
yeah,
disassemble.
yeah. That was a good. I like that one. But see, that's the
Yeah.
thing about the '80s movies is like they inspired. They made you feel good. They were like feel good movies, right? Like the Goonies. Hey you guys, remember that guy? But like the Goonies was a great movie, man. I love it. Like I honestly wouldn't mind to see like a part two, but like change it around. Don't make like these. Don't bring back old cast members looking all gordos and stuff. Just
Well, that's why I'm interested in seeing Beetlejuice to see how they redo it. It's either going to be really good, where you're like, oh my gosh, they did such a great job bringing everybody back, or it's going to be a really tired remake. And that's the tough thing with it. It was kind of like,
what?
Back to the Future got 3. So that almost didn't get made. There's a huge story. If you want to look it up, go online. There's tons of YouTube videos and documentaries based around it. The very first one, Robert Zemeckis, all those guys, it was very close to not being made. It got kind of put away for a little while at one place, and they had to. So, anyways, when it did so well, they were like, we have to do part 2 and part 3 like right now. And when they finished up with part 3, spoiler alert for any of you that have not seen it, the third one, they destroy the time machine. So, and the reason they did that is they did not want that movie to be brought back to life ever, because they didn't want, it to be spoiled from what they had created, and to do some kind of dumb reboot. And thank goodness, now, I had talked to somebody else about it that was a big fan of Back to the Future, and they brought up a good point and said, well, they were moving in so many timelines. Who's to say that they couldn't bring it back and say that person was at a different timeline or something like that? So I get it, but
Kind of
but
like
I
multiverse.
multiverse. There you go. But I don't think that would ever happen, only because those guys would probably put a halt to it really quick. And,
Well, here's the thing. Going back a little bit on what we were talking about in remakes, I know like part 2s and 3s usually aren't as good as the original one, but when you do make one and and you recast the same cast, I like if they did um another Willy Wonka and Gene Wilder was an older Wonka, I think it'd be a great movie because it's still him and he still could bring that character to life. Like
right.
Beetlejuice, I don't know, is Michael Keaton coming out as Beetlejuice?
He
See,
sure is.
Michael Keaton's such a great actor that
and you can't
you
voice everything.
yeah,
You can't.
you can't duplicate it, you can't take it away,
No.
and so I think that he will have a great contribution. And if you bring a bunch of those other actors back, they worked together once and did a great job. They could do it the same thing. I think the biggest thing is if your storyline sucks, then it doesn't matter who's in it, right? But I think
Right.
if they create a good storyline to kind of follow up on the old one, I think it'd be great. I think I'm going to say that this new one's going to be pretty good. The Maverick, I thought was a good movie. They updated it. He was still in it. He was, I liked it. I really did.
I tell you what.
It made me feel like an American patriot. I felt like I was flying in an eagle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I remember going and seeing that in the theater, and
Maverick.
one of the folks that was there. I had mentioned. I said, "This might be sacrilege, but I feel like this was." And I love the first one. Don't get me
Yep.
wrong. Top Gun was awesome. I was like, I feel like this one was better than the first. It's one of the first times that a remake or a reboot or second half. I don't even know what to call that because it's so many years later, and it's the same basic major cast person, but they kind of because like Kelly McGillis, they didn't have her in it anymore. Yeah, they changed
she
a bunch
weighs
of the
like 400 pounds. She can very well be on a motorcycle. You know what I mean?
yeah,
But-
and they had him on the original motorcycle that he was on.
Yeah.
So
So but you know what? I think the reason it was so good is because you had some good young actors in it. He kind of contributed. He trained them, kind of. So he was
Correct.
still following somewhat of a storyline. He wasn't like it led. See, those are kinds of movies that I like where the old actor is kind of washing out. He's getting disappearing in the background.
Right.
And you got these nice young ones that are taking the roles and do a great job with it. That
Right.
young kid that plays what was I forgot his handle. What was his handle? Goose's son.
Oh, Goose. Oh, yeah.
Anyway, he did a phenomenal role.
He did. He did a
and
really
I like
good
that
job.
kid. And so I think that one's was successful only because it came at a time where we needed a little bit of patriotism going
That's right.
into society, but it also had some good actors in it. And I think that that's the reason for its success is because you still had Tom Cruise in it, but you updated it. You got some good fighting scenes in there, some good dog fights up in the air. It was great. I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They one is that his love interest was Jennifer Connelly, who
she hot.
She's a year older than us, man, and she looked phenomenal in that movie.
She's 46. Oh man,
there you go.
Don't look her age up, you sons of bitches.
No, and you're right. The kids that were in that movie were phenomenal. All of them did I think a great job. Nothing felt forced. We've talked about this before about all the wokeism in movies and things like that, and they didn't have any of that. I know that they had. Somebody might say, well, they had like the girl pilot and stuff like that. You know what? It didn't feel forced at all. It didn't feel like they were like, oh, we have to put a female pilot, we have to put a black pilot, we have to put a Asian pilot, we have to do all this kind of stuff. It felt totally natural.
It did.
These would be normally people that would, percentage wise of populace and all that stuff. It felt really good. And one thing I really liked about it, whether they do it or not, Tom Cruise left that movie where all those kids are trained good. They had that bond that in another 5, 10, 15 years from now, they can reboot that movie.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't even have to be in it anymore. He's done his part. He's walked away. Now you've got the new kids that can take over. And it's like James Bond, you just got different Bonds over the years that just kind of take over.
But it works, right?
It did. It
really
was
works.
really good. And you know what? It did really great in the box office. And me on a personal level, I'm happy it did really good in the box office.
And so now going back to some of the non just single movies that didn't have a part 2 or anything like that, were those good old feel good movies like 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller. I mean, and I think one of the reasons they were so relatable and so well received is because you're looking at just your average high school kids. Like that was our life in high school. You get in trouble, you go to detention. Right. You sit there with a bunch of different people from different groups. Remember we talked about it. It wasn't even race. It was just groups. And they just, they didn't talk to each other. By the end of the day, they became a group of kids that coexisted in detention,
Right.
And I hate to mention this, but there was no minorities in the Breakfast Club. They're all white.
Oh, they were all they were all bad kids.
See, because
Every
minorities,
last one of them.
we are good kids, and y'all white folks just get out of hand.
The bad kids.
But no, I got to Emilio Estevez. He's Hispanic. He was the jock in that movie. Remember?
Yeah, but if you're Mexican, you're still
but then
you're still white.
Yeah, I know you're right. So then you had like Fast Times at Ridgemont High. You had the stoner surfer, right? You had people worked at the mall. That was like everybody had jobs at the mall. So
Right.
people related to those
And
movies.
everybody hung out there. I mean,
Yeah,
that was
exactly. So we all
Yeah.
related to those kind of movies because that was us. That was our high school times. And even Weird Science. Yes, it was a sci-fi little movie, but how
Right.
many of us are not looking at back then looking at JCPenney catalogs, right? With the bras and the underwear and stuff
Wow.
like that. All of a sudden you're denying it. You're a denier, sir. A denier, I say. But
Don't give away all of our secrets.
but you know what I mean? Those
Yeah.
were related. The Goonies. How's that related to us? When we were kids, what would we do? We'd go out there and explore. I mean, we didn't have an
Trying to
ocean
adventure.
We
Right.
didn't have an ocean in our back door, but we went out to the desert, right to the evergreens. We'd make
Mhm.
tree houses. We had our
Yeah.
box stashed of porn, or you did. We had all kinds of stuff going on. But that's what we did as kids, man. We were never home. We were creating adventures for ourselves,
Yeah.
And so again, all these movies were relatable to us and at the times. Lost Boys, remember Lost Boys?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Lost Boys was really good.
that movie was scary, but it was good. It was a really good movie. But like I said, Footloose, all those movies. How many of us, like even in Hispanic culture, we have strict parents and they don't, hey, you can't go out, or some people related to Footloose, right? Because you have some of those southern towns, very religious. You can't be dancing, you can't be singing, you can't have parties. Not necessarily dancing, but you can't have parties, and
Right.
and that so again, another relatable movie. It's just cool stuff like that I think back then it wasn't about like violence, and it wasn't about it was just about relatable things in our life that was happening at that time. And I think that's what made those movies so popular, was the fact that we could see ourselves like the Spacolis. We could see ourselves like, hey, you guys, we could see
Yeah.
ourselves like just all these people, the jock in the Breakfast Club, or the nerd, or, or the outcast. We all were able to identify with a character or two in these movies. Stand By Me. Remember that movie?
Oh yeah.
There's just, dude, I saw a dead animal. We'd go out there to look at dead animals, right? Because we
Yeah.
were just like, it was just weird. We wanted to do things. So I don't know. I think that's what made it very, very fun for us, and I think relatable to us. Where today's movies are just like out there, right? And
Right.
like they have we can't relate to it at all. But I guess they call it entertainment now. I don't know. It's just weird to me now the way the movies are today.
Well, I know there was a question asked of what's the Star Wars guy? George Lucas. There you go. And they asked Jorge Lucas, and they asked him a question about the next couple decades in movies, how it would be. And I'm not going to quote him verbatim because I don't have it here, but he basically said, and I'll try to find the quote and put it up here. He basically said that he sees the movie industry going down, that they are recycling movies. How many times have we talked about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that nobody's coming up with original ideas and stuff like that, and they're just rehashing old stuff. Now, if you're doing a second part, kind of like we talked about Maverick, years later, you're revitalizing. That's why at the beginning of this, I asked about E.T. Imagine they did a reboot kind of thing, and E.T. now comes back. The actor from that, the kid, I mean, he'd be an adult. He'd be our age now. Elliot. He would be our age now, right? Or somewhere in that realm. I don't know. Is he older than us? No, I think he'd be.
No, I think so. We were 10, so he is a little bit older than us.
Probably older, huh?
Yeah, a little bit older, but not by much. Do you remember? I just remember. I think it was the 80s. National Lampoon's Vacation with Chevy Chase.
Yeah, that was 1983.
Dude, that was a funny
1983.
movie.
Yeah, it was.
And again,
See there.
that's another relatable movie. We'd go
Right.
on vacations. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
We had,
yeah, totally.
dude, I know.
Wally World.
Dude, yeah. My aunt had a station wagon. I remember riding in the back. Like that was our thing. No seatbelts. There's nothing like that. Shame on you if you wore a seatbelt.
Hey, bro, just so you know, Henry Thomas that played the kid on E.T.
Yeah.
He's 52 years old.
What? Fudge.
He's actually older than us though. He turned 52 September 9th of he was born in 1971, so September.
Oh, he's
9th
older than
was
us. He's
last
older.
year. Yeah, he's older.
Yeah. Jeez, bro, you got me weird there.
That's pretty crazy. So, I mean, who knows? Would they do a reboot and bring him back? I don't know.
He's
Drew,
too old.
Drew Barrymore played his younger sister.
Yeah,
so
yeah, I remember that.
So maybe they say he went and fought a war and didn't make it back, and Drew Barrymore would be now the lead character because he never, did a whole lot. But what his mom was Dee Wallace in that movie.
And then what's his name that played
I don't know.
Who was the dad?
I
can't remember because I'm confusing him with the dad from Poltergeist.
I don't remember his name. I remember Peter Coyote. He was the
Peyote?
Coyote.
Oh.
Like woo. He was like the government dude.
Oh. You remember Tron?
And then C. Thomas Howell was in it, remember?
Oh yeah, C. Thomas Howell. Yeah.
He was in it. I'm trying to think who else. Anyhow.
Do you remember Tron?
Yeah.
That was a good movie. That was a good show. Or movie. That was a lot of good. There was a lot of God, E.T., bro. I used to love that movie. I really thought they were gonna make a part 2. I thought he was gonna come back, like visit or something. Like, dude, how do you just leave like that? Like they saved you, bro, and then you leave and you don't come back.
Right?
Like, you were a kid, I get it, but you eventually became an adult. You could have your own UFO and shit. Well, he never came back. Horrible friend.
Well, what the heck? It was. That was the first time I had seen really big marketing in a movie. And that was for Reese's Pieces. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because that's what he used to get E.T. back to his house or whatever. Yeah, and I didn't remember seeing stuff used in a movie like that before, so hugely. And if you look at it through time, like Reese's Pieces went through the roof, like everybody wanted them at that point,
Oh, yeah.
So, but yeah, what was it? Say Anything? Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
John Cusack?
Yeah.
The 1980s.
Was that the one where he's on the radio?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that. Dude, that's iconic. I see commercials and they do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one of those things. It's like, so even if you're not so much, referring to the total movie, that one moment in that movie is pop culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is a cultural iconic thing.
Yeah.
Better Off Dead. Right? Better Off Dead with John Cusack, another movie.
Mannequin.
I want my $2. I want my $2. Oh, Mannequin. Wow.
Mannequin?
She went on to go play in Sex and the City.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Dude, there was just a lot of great movies back then. I just loved it. It was, I think that it allowed, I don't know, back then that there was a lot of expansion as far as like people. Like throwing out, because movies at that point were just picking up. People were admiring them, they were liking them, and they're like, they were creative. They're like, let's make a movie about this, let's do one about this, and it was just awesome.
Well, another movie, and you had mentioned what did you say earlier? Kenny Loggins did a ton of soundtracks for back then, and one of them was for Caddyshack, which was in 1980. So I'm All Right, and the little gopher and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that was Caddyshack. Of course they had sequels after. Again, that comes back to that whole thing. They weren't as good. Just like you had mentioned National Lampoon's Vacation. The first one was the best, right? They had to change characters. So like they had the kids were different and all that. So it never, they were still good, but it was never the same. They could never make it just as good as before. Now, here's one. In 1985, same year as Back to the Future, you had Madonna played in the movie. You remember that? Desperately Seeking Susan?
Yeah.
because she was so popular. They thought, oh, we'll make a movie, and the movie will be really good. And
Yeah.
it probably wasn't the best movie.
Remember this one? You remember this one? Hello, Steven. Would you like to play a game?
Oh, War Games.
War Games, baby.
Yeah.
That one scared the crap out of me.
That was
dude.
pretty scary.
It was like I don't know, but all these actors
Well-
a lot of these actors were in a bunch of 80 movies. Matthew Broderick,
Yep.
right? That's his name.
Yep.
He
that's
was
correct.
he was of course Ferris Bueller, and then he came out in
Yep.
War Games, and man, that was such a good movie, you know. And it's like at the time you didn't think about it, but now you're looking back today to that movie, you're like, computers control all our massive weapons.
Right.
You know,
right.
so it is kind of scary that, you know, back then they were talking about it, but that was such a great movie. Again, you know,
Yeah.
it was, I loved watching that movie, but I did like Matthew Broderick. I think he played some really good movies,
Yeah.
and he was
Well,
really
you
funny.
had those certain people. Matthew Broderick was a big one. Tom Cruise was, because he did Risky Business, a bunch of other movies during the 80s. You know, John Cusack, who
John Cusack,
we were talking about.
yeah.
Molly Ringwald. My gosh,
Molly
how many
Ring- oh,
movies?
she was-
all of
yeah.
the, what was it? John Hughes / Penny Marshall movies. All of those movies had Molly. They cast her in every single one of them.
Even Emilio Estevez was in a lot of those little
Yeah.
movies. He came out in that what was that one scary one with all the semis that got possessed?
Oh, Maximum Overdrive.
Maximum Overdrive. He was in that one too. You remember that one?
yeah,
Dude,
I do.
Man,
Yeah.
I'm like, what the heck? It was a good movie though. I don't know. It was
Yeah,
funny to me.
it was
But you know who was also back in the
different.
day was I forget his name, but so many people make fun of him. He came out in that one funny kind of thrilling movie called Raising Arizona.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Nicolas Cage.
Nick Cage.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
Do you remember that movie Raising Arizona?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But you know,
that was a weird role compared to everything else he does.
yeah. But it was he was in a lot of movies back then. You know, those were some real good movies. And I think earlier, and you very touched on it, but we had a lot of those gangster movies, Scarface and
yeah.
what other ones were
1983 Scarface, man. That is an iconic movie. Also, if you think about, people quote stuff from that all the time.
Untouchables.
You know, yeah,
Untouchables was
yeah.
during that time, and then
yeah, that was 80. It was later on in 87. Yeah,
yeah, there was another one, something America,
a creepy one. I don't know if we mentioned this or not. The Shining.
Once Upon a Time in America. That was another gangster movie with with that sorry ass Robert De Niro, but James Woods was also in there.
Yeah. Man,
All
what
of a
opposites?
sudden,
what opposites, right?
Yes.
James Woods is like polar opposite of De Niro.
But maybe back then they didn't have that, you know, because again, just real quick, we talked about how back then the Democrats were more conservative than anything. So
Yeah.
and that's what Hollywood was. But you know, Clint Eastwood, he had a bunch of like war movies, westerns, and stuff like that in the 80s. Pale Rider, Heartbreak Ridge, like those were great movies,
Right.
you know. And he's always been a god. That dude, like, I think he has like what is that called? Formaldehyde as his blood, because like he stays like he keeps going and going. That dude's been making movies since he was like in his early 20s, and he's right now like 203 years old, and he's still making movies.
Yeah. Well, all right, everybody. Hopefully you had a good time kind of strolling down memory lane with us with the 80s movies and beyond. And if you like this episode, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe. If this is your first time here, again, you can find us by going to Linktree/Joe and Jay Outspoken. And we do something every Tuesday. We try to keep it fun and light every once in a while, because we got to, everybody knows this world. We got a lot of political nonsense going on right
There's
now.
way too much right now. We needed a break.
Way too much. Yeah, we needed a break from everything going on. So, and then mid-month Wednesdays, we have Outspoken Men's Edition.
Yeah.
So make sure and join for that. All right. Well, everybody, take care of one another.
And remember, do better, be better.
And as always, God bless America.
We'll see you again.
See y'all.